Here are the studies I mentioned just briefly. In one that was undertaken by our partner in Brazil, comparing 8 coffee farms that had come into our certification system, where we certify farms that comply with the standard, the Sustainable Agricultural Standard. And these farms were compared with 8 farms that hadn't, so a control site. And amongst, in this quite a long detailed report, which is available to anybody, they noticed using both local technology of observation and also some satellite technology, increased vegetation, these are environmental benefits, reforestation, a more conserved forest landscape, cleaner water sources, which they tested, quality of water, and improved sanitation, because also the standard affects what's happening in the houses that are on the farms as well, not just in the farming landscape. And reduced agrochemical use. We, in the standard, don't prohibit the use of agrochemicals, but argue for the rational and reduced use of them. And also safety in the way that they're stored and handled, because often that's a major difficulty, that you find agrochemicals stored next door to a food source and maybe within reach of children or people who can't read labels, etc. So these are some of the findings we got in Brazil from that study. And a study that's just in the last couple of months been undertaken with 100 smallholder cocoa farmers in Côte d'Ivoire, where some of the benefits that were noticed from people who are adopting this standard, and this was all first-person information, things that they told us, was that the elimination of child labour, that people were oriented and educated, that children simply had to go to school, that they wouldn't be working in the farms in the way that a lot of children we know do. Participation of women, one particular cooperative that was working in this program increased the number of women members from 9 to 54. The growth of the cooperatives as people came into the system and thought, well, this is interesting, this is worthwhile, you get access to learning, you get access to new technology, and you get access to a stronger structure with which to negotiate in the market. And then the environmental benefits, reforestation, this is not just for the greater good of the planet, but this helps farmers to sustain their productivity, because in the tropical sun, if you don't have a shade cover for some of these tropical crops, then you are going to have your productivity affected, because the soil is not as giving and they're subject to the tropical sun. So market premium, and let's go on to the next slide, because the market sustains this system. And this is why it's working, and this is why you're starting to see products with the Rainforest Alliance seal appearing more and more in the marketplace, including in Ireland. And at the moment we have about 33,000 businesses in the tropical world that are certified, affecting roughly, we think, 2 million people, farmers and employees. Some of the benefits that the market gets out of this, and this is where we're speaking really directly to the private sector, is that it's not just about feeling good or feeling that it's the right thing to do. It's actually about giving some positive business advantages. And I think 3 of them are traceability, because now everybody needs to know, manufacturers need to know their products back down the supply line, where they're coming from, what's going on in the supply chain, because people are asking questions, because safety legislation is all the time getting more complicated, and everybody has to manage that factor of their supply chain. Because people are concerned, companies are concerned about the long-term sustainability of their raw material supply, because if you work in a tropical landscape, and we heard again in one of the presentations this morning, that some of the tropical crops will not produce if climate goes over the point at which they can be produced. And an example, as I just referred to it, cocoa. Cocoa requires a certain amount of rainfall. It requires a certain climatic environment, which, if threatened, will become less productive. And apart from the benefit of not having enough chocolate to eat, that's going to cause a lot of difficulties in the tropical cocoa producing countries. Reduced business risk, and I think this is probably the number one thing that speaks to companies. Companies who have brands to protect, this is their number one concern. Anything that damages the credibility of a brand is a real business problem. And if you don't have good social and environmental practices in your supply chain these days, you have a big business risk. And this is why the Rainforest Alliance is growing so fast, because more and more companies are looking at our system and saying, this is going to help us to reduce our business risk. Here's a few examples of the products. I've seen plenty of Lion's tea this afternoon, and an absolute warehouse full of it coming in, and we're very grateful to Unilever for the support that it's giving to us. McDonald's, these are brands that are available in Ireland. Innocent Smoothies and Kenko Coffee, which is advertising a lot at the moment as it rolls out an increased commitment. So, promoting efficient relations in supply chains, something that's, again, pure business sense, makes sense for everybody. Commonly said, companies don't want to have producers knowing more about the market, they don't want to have... This isn't true. It's no interest to companies to have poor producers who are exploited, because that's not long-term going to encourage this investment in their supply chain, not going to encourage people to stay in business. And also, if a commodity is too cheap, this doesn't give a company any advantage over its competitors. So companies are not particularly interested in having the cheapest price, they're interested in having a stable price that's going to give them long-term supply. The system, because it's a certification system, has to be rigorous and credible, otherwise the label is of no value to the company who puts it on their product. This comes about through the accreditation of Rainforest Alliance with certain organisations like the International Standards Organisation, the ICL Alliance, which is a voluntary accreditation system, the Sustainable Agriculture Network, which is the body of tropical agricultural organisations that developed the standard. This is not something that was done in the north. It's then applied in each country of operation through a stakeholder process of defining local indicators to make it more applicable to the local realities and the specific crop. And it is compatible with other certifications. And we've heard fair trade mentioned once here today. I know is the Irish Fair Trade Network here? Anyone? This is a different system, but it works quite compatibly in the sense that once producers are used and organised in groups, they can get one or more of these certifications. So my final point is that certification tends to give producers additional productivity and or quality. Because they're investing more in their farms, they will tend to get a return on that. They will tend to get a return from keeping shade on their farms. They will tend to get a return in the market because the market will reward them. This I think, is the third payback mechanism, and it's only just starting, but it's already an established system in forestry, which is payments for storing carbon. Because in forested landscapes, which are very conducive to producing a lot of tropical commodities, if you can develop a system, which is now a lot of organisations, including our own, are working on, to value the carbon that is retained in the forest or added through reforesting, then you can set up a mechanism for giving an additional value to farmers from that. So the message all along the line is it's not a question of will we be able to afford in the modern world to be able to be generous to tropical countries, or to sustain the environment when we've got to add productivity. The message is we actually can't afford to do anything else, because if we do it properly, they're not incompatible. The good management of the environment and good treatment of people are absolutely consistent with good business management. Thank you.